Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Thursday, February 18th. This is your daily Buckeye Fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 196 days, the game against Michigan in 282 days. The Ohio State women's hockey team is ranked number 2 in the country. That is the highest ranking in program history, following a road sweep of Minnesota, the team that was ranked second last week. My guest today is Nadine Muzerall. She is the head coach of women's hockey at Ohio State. First of all, Coach, congratulations on what has been a fantastic season so far.
Thank you. A trying season, but a fantastic season.
So for people who aren't familiar with your program, you played and then were an assistant coach at Minnesota. You won national championships there in both roles. What did you learn from your experience as a Gopher that you've carried over to your time running the Ohio State program?
I give a lot of credit to Laura Halderson, who started the program from scratch. So I was part of the inaugural season in the 97-98 era, outdating myself a little bit, but just how to build a program from scratch. She was starting from nothing and grew it into something pretty special. And then, I was coached by Joel and Laura and Brad Frost, who are now, Brad and Joel are now the associate head coach and head coach at Minnesota. And I actually coached, as you had mentioned, 5 years under them. And, I learned a lot just of what an elite program should look like, the standards of what that is, the commitment. And so I would say I learned a lot through that of what it really took to be a national contender. I was fortunate that we won 5, as a player and as a coach, but it's very hard to accomplish. And there's very few that are in that pool. So I think the one thing that I learned is just all of the challenges that come with it. And you don't see it when you're a player. You're wondering, what do your coaches do all day when they're not at practice, but there's a lot that goes behind the scenes that I learned, as an assistant through working with Brad Frost at Minnesota.
Now, you were hired at Ohio State in September 2016, and you took over a program that had never finished higher than 4th in the WCHA. It was coming off a year in which they won 6 out of 28 league games. You don't need to know a lot about women's hockey to know that's not super fantastic. So what was it that made this an appealing job to you?
I have to give a lot of credit to Diana Sabo, who is the deputy athletic director at the Ohio State and my direct boss. She oversees women's ice hockey, and, just thank her for giving me a chance. I was a second assistant and maybe not originally their first pick because it was so late. They let go of the previous coach mid-August. And I was actually in Calgary coaching Hockey Canada's under 18 team. And so when I came back, I had a phone call, a text, and an email from OSU. And I remember saying to my husband, who played football in the Big Ten, I keep getting these calls from OSU. I can assume why they're calling. And he just looked at me straight up and was saying, "Are you out of your mind? This is the Ohio State. It doesn't get any bigger or better than this." And then I just remember saying, "Well, their hockey's not very good." And he said, "We'll fix that." So I always like a challenge. One of the reasons I took over, one of the reasons I went to Minnesota was the inaugural season. So I wanted to be a part of something big. I just didn't want to be another number on the team. And so I always looked at the Ohio Station, the foundation is great. It's laid out nicely, athletics, excellence, tradition, Gene Smith being the guru he is in terms of leadership. And I knew that they had a ground to stand on. It just needed to be remodeled. And so I think with the background that I had, both at elite programs such as Minnesota, but also with Hockey Canada, I could put my own spin on culture and dynamics that could fit or would need to fit this new program that I was trying to design.
Well, thanks to your husband's very helpful advice to fix it. I'm sure that was a tremendous help for you. But that still had to be a big transition going from Minnesota, which had just won 4 of the previous 5 national championships with you as an assistant coach, and then to a team that was 6-21-1 in the conference. So how do you start changing the culture around the program like that?
Well, of course, it was appealing to come to Ohio because I knew I'd have the support and the resources through Diana and through the institution. But it was challenging because, as you'd mentioned, it was my alma mater. And my husband's alma mater. So all of our friends were there. We had a great network. But I do like the weather here a lot better. I can tell you that. It's not, a culture doesn't change overnight. That's for sure. It's something that you chip away at even now. We're always looking to get better and stronger. And my first year, I called that the observation year. I just watched and I learned. And I didn't want to come in guns a-blazing trying to change too much. I wanted to just see what was working well and try to embrace that, but then also things that needed to be cleaned up. Some were very obvious and evident, but I wanted to honor their tradition and some of the things that they did here. As a new person coming in from a different Big Ten school, you didn't want to, step on that. So kudos to our resources in the athletic department with Focus 3. I know that the football team had used them a lot in the past too. And we had Scott Daly from Focus 3, an officer in the Navy SEAL program. And we worked together about what was my vision and what did I believe in? Just find the roots of what you believe in. And then how are we going to get that belief from paper into real life? Because, people come and go through a program, but you're going to stay. So it's got to be what you believe in and what you want the culture and the dynamics to look like. And of course it looks great on paper, but now you have to implement it. And that's the hard piece. And to be quite honest, I just flipped the script right away. And we changed up some things that were bold, really bold. And it just came down to, do you guys really want to win? And I understand the temptations of being here at this school and the surroundings that, you are involved in. But if you really want to, have a great college experience, I can tell you, I don't remember one night going out with my girlfriends that defined my life, but I do know 5 national championships that did. And do you want to be a part of that? Do you want to be part of something greater and leave banners hanging from the rafters that you can share with your baby girl or your son one day? And they did, and they bought in, and it was hard. Some pushed a little bit, most embraced. And then, you weed out those ones that push too much. And then once they started, Tom, to see us winning, then they started to believe. So really, for the first 2 years, I really had to gain their trust and their respect. Bi-weekly, I had bi-weekly meetings with every athlete, not just to talk hockey, just to talk everything, to show that I cared about them. And it took a lot of time. But then they started to respect and trust me, and then each other. And then they're holding each other accountable, because I'm not policing everything. They got to control the locker room. And we started to have great leadership. And then again, with the results, then they started to believe. And then once you believe in something and you become passionate, that's when the culture is now grown.
When Urban Meyer was hired as the football coach at Ohio State for the 2012 season, he looked at Alabama as the team that they had to catch up to if they really wanted to be great. Was Minnesota a program like that you used as something of a measuring stick when you got to Columbus?
Absolutely. And it was personal, right? Because I knew how they ran things. I would say Minnesota and then Wisconsin too. And that's challenging. Unlike Urban, he doesn't have to see them maybe till the national championship, whereas we have to play sometimes 4 to 6 times in the season before you even get to playoffs. So that would make it challenging too, of how to prepare to beat those guys on the regular and not just, win one game and win a national championship, which is great too. But how are you going to get there? Because you have to overcome those obstacles and those teams before you even can be, asked to the national championship. And of course, when you walk into Minnesota's rink and Wisconsin's rink, it can be intimidating, where they have all the banners, all their Olympians, all over the place. And then, we would come in and I just knew ways to beat them because, I played there and coached there. But then also at Wisconsin, Mark has been around for many years. So now we know his tendencies, right? And so we're kind of the new team coming in, and we're more, we have obviously some of our own blue chip players, but we were more blue collar, kind of like the Rocky. We're going to get punched and we know we're going to get hit, and that's okay. But we're going to keep going down swinging, and we're going to keep punching back at you. And so we're going to be very hard to play against. And one thing we took a lot of pride in was chipping away at them. And then now, after years, now we're the team to beat. Now they're nervous to play us, which is a fantastic feeling.
You mentioned Mark there. Just for people who don't know, the head coach of the Wisconsin women's hockey team is Mark Johnson, who you may remember from a movie called Miracle. Played a little hockey back in the day himself. Recruiting has to be a little bit of a challenge for you guys geographically. I mean, just for comparison's sake, Minnesota has 17 players on its roster right now from within its home state. You have 1 player from a hometown listed in Ohio. So obviously Minnesota has been a big hockey state a lot longer than Ohio has. But I'm assuming that part of that is also maybe the Ohio High School Athletic Association doesn't offer women's hockey as a sanctioned varsity sport, which then maybe leads to younger girls maybe not starting with it or sticking with it as often. Is that something you'd like to see happen, making it a sanctioned varsity sport for high school girls in Ohio? Or are there other ways you'd like to see women's hockey grow as a sport in the state?
Well, I got to give a lot of kudos to, Tortorelli growing the sport here, with the Blue Jackets. And then, of course, Steve Rollick, his boys often being in postseason play. I remember a couple of years ago, we were both in the Frozen Four and the excitement that brought. And remember, I had a phone call missed from New York. And I'm like, who do I know from New York? And it was John Tortorelli leaving me a message and asking, hey, if you ever need help on your power play or special teams, I'm just so excited that the game of hockey is growing in Ohio. And so it's really nice that we have that network between the three of us. And I would like to see it sanctioned, but we have to start small, with teams, more girls teams, opening opportunities, but we also have to build more rinks. At Minnesota, although they have their high school that has hockey, every high school has their own rink. And so we're not there yet. We only have like 3 hockey rinks, and it's a battle to try to get ice time. And so until we can develop more facilities, I don't know how feasible that is to have happen, at least in Columbus, and I know when I'm coming out of the office really late at night, sometimes it's midnight and there's still club hockey going on. So there is a love for hockey. We're so close to Canada. We're so close to Michigan that has a lot of hockey. Pennsylvania, with Pittsburgh in Philadelphia, but it's growing. Girls hockey is one of the fastest growing sports in the country. It's just, I think we're lacking in the facilities.
Now, your team plays in the WCHA, not the Big Ten, because the Big Ten doesn't sponsor women's hockey as a league sport either. So there are 4 Big Ten schools that play hockey, which is Wisconsin and Minnesota, which are in your league. Penn State's in another league. Those are the other 3. So this is a little bit like when the men's team played in the CCHA before Penn State started their men's program and the Big Ten started sponsoring the sport as well. Is there a is a Big Ten women's hockey league something that you'd like to see at some point? And has there been any movement towards one?
I think, when the men transferred over to the Big Ten, I know when I was at Minnesota, that was almost, that almost hindered them a little bit because, they got to play North Dakota and St. Cloud and Mankato that were phenomenal teams. I think, I give a lot of credit to the teams that are in our league, but the top teams, besides Duluth have been Wisconsin, Minnesota, and now the Ohio State. And so I think if we were ever able to separate, with Penn State now being in the top 8 in the country, that, we have our 4, but we would still need to find at least 2 more Big Ten schools. And I'm a little surprised that, our neighbors to the north being Michigan and knowing how big hockey is in Michigan. I'm not sure what the holdup there is, but that would be great if we could get a Michigan or Michigan State or even like a Northwestern, because Chicago is really big in hockey too. So I can't speak for why they don't yet, but it would be interesting because I feel like it's a league of Minnesota and then us in Wisconsin, and St. Thomas is joining in next year in our conference. So that's another private team just outside of the cities. And I feel that they'll be good quick because of their location. And so sometimes I feel it's more just a Minnesota league that we're a part of. So I wouldn't be opposed to it by any means because we would still get to keep Minnesota and Wisconsin.
Now, this has been a really unusual season for pretty much every sport. Women's hockey, obviously no exception. You guys were ranked 4th in the nation, all set to play Minnesota in the NCAA quarterfinals last year, like almost ready to get on the airplane to go play that game. And then the season got canceled. Even now, you were supposed to be playing St. Cloud State this weekend in your regular season finale, and then they had to cancel due to some COVID issues within their program. How have you and your players managed that, dealing with all the uncertainty and the challenges this year has kind of brought?
These kids have broad shoulders. I have to give them credit, Tom. Well, it's one of those things I feel like I'm just repeating the same thing over and over as control our controllables and what we can do. And it is unfortunate with St. Cloud because that was going to be our senior weekend, hoping that, we could have swept them and that we could have, secured a little bit more comfort in that second spot. And now that we don't have games this weekend or next weekend, that might be challenging to hold that spot. But again, you can't control that, and so it was difficult last year. Actually, the team was at the airport and the bags were checked. And I remember getting a call from Diana and saying, hey, turn them around. We got to get them back because there's discussion that it's going to get shut down. And I don't want you guys in Minnesota when that happens. And so, yeah, that was a tough day, but it was a tough day for everyone. and in some parts, I think that we just would look to our left and look to our right, and all of our sisters were hurting, but we were doing it together, and that growed some unity within. And, the one thing I guess I could take to the team with a little bit of, light at the end of the tunnel was, hey, you won your last game. Think of being Minnesota, think of being Wisconsin in that locker room as a senior. You blew up their season and they didn't even know it. Mm-hmm. So at least you've graduated as champions, and so we always thought that, my girls thought we won the national championship because we won the WCHA, which is the hardest league. So we crowned the NCAA tournament, I guess.
Yeah, that was last year's WCHA Final Faceoff. That's the conference tournament for your league. As you said, you won that last year. That was the first time in program history you guys did that. What did that mean to you guys as a team to accomplish that? And how big would that be to defend that title again this year?
Well, it's going to be difficult. Like, just winning it was difficult, and trying to defend it. Now you have a target on your back. And I think that we were always that team that was, not as respected as I think that we should have been. And sometimes I still don't think we are, until this week we finally got some credit. But I always felt like, what do you have to do to move up in the rankings, because we're playing 10 times against number 1 and number 2 in the country. And we've won 6 of them, and Wisconsin's only 2 losses were to us, number 1 in the country. So sometimes it's difficult to move up, and I still struggle understanding the mathematics behind that. But it is going to be difficult, especially not having the games from now until then. But my girls are like caged animals. They're just really excited to get out there, and we're going to use that as momentum. For these next 2 weeks, it's like you're just kind of keeping them on a leash and just ready to let them go. And like I said, they're blue collar. Some of these girls are from Minnesota, and some of them weren't recruited by Minnesota, so they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. And if you were to look at Wisconsin and Minnesota's roster, numerous of them are U18 players, and we have 3. And so we look at how do we play as a whole package, and not just individual players. And I think that's what makes us very strong is we have a wave of people that just keep coming after you. There's not as much gap between our first and our third line. And so, but they're going to be excited, and it's going to be difficult because it's back in Minnesota again. So that's, an advantage, of course, for them. And we're traveling, but we're used to it now. There's no excuses. And we're just excited to defend that title. And like we always say, my team was telling me, and I didn't know this, that there's this Ohio against the world. There's like a shirt out there. There's this slogan out there. And it's funny because someone interviewed me a while ago, and they're like, do you feel it's like you against the world? I'm like, yeah, I do. A lot of the times, like us, like women's hockey against the world. And then my assistant was like, have you not seen those shirts? And I said, no, what shirts? So actually, we're going to be ordering some of them because I do feel oftentimes it is us versus everyone else.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you guys are going to get a chance to defend that title again this year, and then hopefully do get a chance to play in that NCAA tournament that you didn't last year. That is not, you're not going to get a home game. It sounds like the NCAA, I guess, just changed that. Yeah, is that it sounds like they went from home campus sites to everyone's going to play kind of in one spot in Erie, Pennsylvania. Is that right?
Yeah, Erie, Pennsylvania. So exciting. But yeah, they actually decided that the first round will be on Monday and Tuesday. So 2 teams will play Monday and then 2 on Tuesday. And then the Frozen Four will be, that Friday semis and then that Sunday's finals. But, I remember just thinking, wow, we're going to have the opportunity to host the first ever NCAA first round at our institution. How great is that? And talk about growing the game. Again, fans, I don't know, limited, but to have young girls see that and have the opportunity to come and watch, what it looks like and the best of the best. And then unfortunately, we don't get that this year, but that's all right. We'll handle our business and do it again next year. But yes, we'll be in Erie, Pennsylvania, Monday or Tuesday if we're invited.
All right. Well, really appreciate you taking the time to join me, and best of luck in the postseason.
We're excited. Thank you very much for your time.
And of course, women's hockey is just one of these sports we're keeping an eye on at BuckeyesScoop.com. The Ohio State men's basketball team has a big game tonight at Penn State. That's going to be one to watch. And spring football right around the corner. We are starting to get geared up for spring football as the team gets through its winter workouts and starts getting ready to start making those initial preparations for the spring game. So you can check all of that stuff out at buckeyescoop.com. It is a wonderful site, great community, fantastic team of insiders, insight you just can't get anywhere else. So make sure you check that out at buckeyescoop.com. Also, make sure you check out all of our great podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Spreaker, wherever fine podcasts are sold. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of those. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.